Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. Today we're going to be talking about Nilou. When Nilou was released, she was one of the most underrated characters and misunderstood characters in Genshin Impact. And it's not totally without reason. Her kit does have major gameplay issues or restrictions depending on how you want to look at it, and she's definitely not without faults. However, she is one of the strongest, most unique Genshin Impact characters in the entire game, and I think she is criminally underrated and criminally misunderstood. Let's talk about why. Even Nilou's role in the game is often misunderstood. Nilou is actually a buffer, a very, very specific and very, very niche buffer who literally exists to buff one thing and one thing only, and that is the bloom reaction, and she is insanely good at it. Her talent changes all regular blooms into bountiful cores, which explode much faster and with much more damage, and with an extremely large AoE relative to regular blooms. A lot of the negativity surrounding this character came about because she was released basically before we had any Dendro characters available. There was basically only 2 Dendro characters at the time, Dendro main character, Kale, both of which were considered, you know, fine characters, but nothing crazy, right? The element was obviously very good, but neither of them did too much outside of just applying that element. And so of course you could run her with both of those characters, and the best fourth option was Kokomi. Barbara could work, and because you really needed a healer, because how her kit works is when the blooms explode, they also do damage to your character, and so you definitely need a healer on the team. So one of those 3 characters has to be a healer. At the beginning, there were no Dendro healers, so the team building was very restrictive, and that right there was the main problem people had with this character, is that you basically pulled her and she only worked for one team. She was a buffer for this one reaction that we really didn't have many characters for, and she only basically had one team with only a tiny bit of flexibility. This did change when Nahida was released. Nahida greatly increases the different things you can do on this team. To be more accurate, she doesn't greatly increase the amount of things you can do, but she does provide enough Dendro that she frees up the slot so she can be the only Dendro character. So you can run someone like Xingqiu or like Yelan along with Nahida, and then the healer, either Kokomi or Barbara. And then once we got Yao Yao, that opened up another team comp where you can run Yao Yao on field, because Yao Yao has some resistance to Dendro. She really increased the amount of teams you could have. And both of these things increased the community reception for Nilou, but the reality is she was extremely strong from day one, and I'm going to tell you why. When you go into the Spiral Abyss, you are met with a choice, and you're going to have to put together 2 teams, and this Abyss isn't the greatest example because I don't really like Nilou in this Abyss. Not every character works in every Abyss. She's not very great at breaking elemental shields that are cryo, and she's not very good versus the Weenut specifically. She can do it, but she's not particularly great at it. But what she does do in general is she makes it so that her entire team is built using characters. You can put this together, or even this works really well, and she's not taking any characters from your first side. You can do whatever you want in this first side. You can run National, you can run Nahida. Of course you can run Nahida on this side, but you don't have to, and that's the craziest thing. She is so flexible in the characters you can take. If you want a more single target focused team, she uses this, but you can still do something on the other side that doesn't take these characters. She doesn't need to run Xingqiu or Yelan. You can save double Hydro for this side. Basically what I'm saying is she elevates weak characters to an insanely high level, like to the level that some of the best AoE teams in the game. To do single target, you do need a Xingqiu or Yelan to really have a single target damage that feels good, in my opinion. But I also don't have Kokomi. And I gotta say, in general, her teams feel cheatingly strong in AoE, and they feel absolutely acceptable in single target. Again, the Weenut is probably her worst Abyss by far she's had since she came out. But even things like the Perpetual Mechanical Array were no problem, right? But her biggest weakness, of course, is her elemental restriction. Her elemental restriction only allows her to be paired with Dendro and Hydro characters. You can't tech in an Electro character if a boss kind of requires Electro. You can't tech in a Geo character for the Wolf Lord, and that is basically her only restriction, is you can't tech in a Pyro character to deal with cryo shields. And if you do, you can use her. You can, or I should mention, you can build what people call DPS Nilou. It doesn't do as much DPS as Bloom Nilou, but you can run Vape Nilou with basically on the national team. And I actually haven't built it yet, but I will I will at some point, but I do know that it is very functional, right? It is something you can do. You can also run Hyper Bloom Nilou, where she's one of the Hydro applicators in a Hyper Bloom team, and these are fine things that you can do. They're just not things that she excels at herself. But before I get into her free-to-play friendliness and her weapons and all those sorts of things, I just want to address one topic that I'm just starting to see people address, and that is the different types of niche. Because people call this character very niche, and she is somewhat niche in a way, but not just in the way that you think, because people think niche means they only fit onto one team, and that is one type of niche, but I would argue that it's not the most important type of niche. The amount of characters she can work with is very similar to someone like Hu Tao, who usually needs a Xingqiu or a Yelan, or she really needs Xingqiu, and then the other two are sort of a flex slot. Now that we have more characters, it was true at the beginning where she only had a couple teammates, but now we have enough Dendro and Hydro characters. Her team building niche isn't as restrictive as it once was, but I thought she was crazy even before that. So now she's just even more flexible, which is great. But the kind of niche people are talking about, that, oh, she only fits onto this type of team, I really don't think that's all that big of a deal, right? I don't think that it's that big of a deal that Keqing's only team is basically limited to a Dendro, Fischl, usually Anemo or Zhongli, right? That's her niche. That's what she can do. Yes, Yaimiko can work with Raiden, and Yaimiko can do a Dendro team, and she can be in a Taser team, and so she's not maybe as niche. And same with someone like Sucrose, right? She's a buffer that can work in a lot of teams. But I don't think it's necessarily bad to only work with these specific characters, or at least not as bad as people say, because the niche that really matters is how good that her different teams deal with different abysses. And in general, she is one of the best, if not the best, AoE team in the game. When it's certain conditions, she absolutely is, and it's not even close. She rivals freeze teams in some AoE, and she surpasses them in others. And then she does just fine in single target as well. So I'm a really big fan of this character's power level, and that niche, which is how well she does versus different iterations of Abyss, she is not nearly as niche as someone like Tighnari. Yes, and Tighnari only works in single target. As soon as you get into AoE, it's really rough. In general, I like the way that Nilou performs better than the way I like Tighnari. Some other pros and cons is this is a completely new playstyle. If you haven't tried this character before, test her out, and it's really satisfying to see those blooms explode because they don't knock the enemies back. So the way that you're fighting is totally different than you're normally used to fighting. So I really like that. Another pro is how insanely free-to-play friendly she is, and she's only getting more free-to-play friendly as well. But basically her weapon, she doesn't have the best free-to-play weapon right now because we have no HP scaling swords. But you just throw an EM sword on here. I've got her on the Dark Iron sword for drip because my Kuki is rocking my other elemental sword and someone else is rocking my Iron Sting. So I'm using the Dark Iron sword on here. I think it looks great. It matches her horns super well. And then she's using a 2-piece HP set, 2-piece Gilded Dreams. This is not a crazy artifact set, because all you need to do is just get HP, right? And I've got a bunch of flat HP, and HP, right? I got kind of lucky and I have a bunch of flat HP on each of my pieces, but it's not even that important to have that flat HP, right? And then you just want as much HP percentage as you can. This piece is garbage, and then this piece is actually quite good. It's got quite a bit of HP, and that's all you're doing. There is a new set that's coming out. We'll talk about that in future prospects, but spoiler alert, it's really good for her, and it's going to make it a lot easier to get closer to her HP cap, because how it works is she has an HP cap where when you get to a certain HP point, the HP stops buffing the blooms. Currently, you can only get there with the key, her signature weapon. I think maybe there's a chance of getting there if you have absolutely insane substats as a free-to-play, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But with the HP that a free-to-play investment can give her, she does more than enough damage. And it's no problem at all. Let's talk about the teams she can work. So when you're constructing a Nilou team, basically all you need to keep in mind is that you need Hydro, you need Dendro, and you need a healer. You can pretty much make anything work in that framework, anything that you want to work. I don't recommend Tighnari. Alhaitham kind of works. Nahida is very excellent. She's definitely the best. One of the common questions is Nahida necessary? No, she's not necessary. For general account value, I would recommend you go for Nahida first, because she does make the team stronger. So I definitely would go for Nahida first, then go for Nilou after. But you can, if you just love Nilou, right, and you don't care for Nahida, then go by all means get Nilou and don't worry too much about Nahida. I would say that her single target performance will fall off a little bit, and she probably won't be able to clear the Weenet, although I still have seen clears where she has. So I highly do recommend Nahida. For your healer slot, you can do Yao Yao, you can do Barbara, or you can do, where's my Barbara? There she is. My favorite free-to-play team for Nilou is this one. I guess this isn't really free-to-play because we have Nahida here, but I do recommend even free-to-plays go for Nahida first. I have tried the Candace variant where you do Candace, Yao Yao, and Nahida, and I don't mind it at all. I like it. I like it a fair bit. I do find that I have a hard time staying alive on some floors because I'm building Yao Yao on full elemental mastery as Candace infuses her spear with Hydro so that she can get procs. In general, when you're building your teams, you want the Hydro characters to be on full elemental mastery. The Dendro characters can be as well. I build Nahida on a mix of elemental mastery, Dendro, and crit. I've got some elemental mastery on my Nilou. If I run a Xingqiu or Yelan, I don't really worry about elemental mastery on them. It just kind of works. And then if I'm running a Kale or Dendro main character, generally I'll try and put them on elemental mastery, but sometimes I can't be bothered. Basically, you're just playing a game of mix and match with Hydro and Dendro characters, and as long as you have a healer, as long as you have elemental mastery on your Hydro characters, that's generally what I like. You can also use Ayato. I don't mind something like this either. You can build Ayato on elemental mastery. There's plenty of guides on Nilou, so if you want to know, if I were to rate, oh, and of course you can run Kokomi here, right, and Kale here. I think it's decided by most people this is her best team, except you're replacing Barbara with Kokomi, and I generally do like this. I generally like this better than the Yao Yao variation. I find that Yao Yao's spear, it just isn't satisfying to use, and so I like this or for me personally. This is kind of generally my go-to as an all-purpose build that can just kind of run through sort of any content that you want, or even overworld content. This is my personal favorite. How she feels to play, how strong she feels. She feels insanely strong. She's one of the few characters that I put in the S tier. She does things differently than other characters. She's adequate in single target, and she's insanely strong as AoE. If you've been enjoying the video, if you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing. But we are over halfway to 1,000 subscribers, and that's when YouTube will monetize my channel. We're building every character in the game. It would be very helpful if you could subscribe, and if you do that, then when you get Nilou, she will actually have a special dance animation just for you. So definitely worth subscribing, and I really appreciate it. Gameplay issues or other issues. The main issue she has is, of course, how restrictive she is. We've already talked about that. Other issues, her overworld performance is a bit annoying because sometimes you're just going to want to have other characters on your team other than strictly Hydro and Dendro characters. So that's a bit annoying. She's not insane in single target, and she's really restrictive in her team building. For future prospect, it was already announced a major, well, I wouldn't say maybe not a major, but a buff for Nilou. We are getting another 2-piece HP set, which is going to allow us free-to-plays to get closer to the upper limit of the HP. That's going to be huge for her. Other future prospects, I would say one thing that could improve Nilou's performance is an EM scaling Hydro character. It's very disappointing that we haven't received one yet. I was hoping that Kaveh, it was disappointing to see that he was a Dendro character, because if he applied Hydro the way he does and he scales with EM, that would be really good for Nilou, because then you're getting, like, imagine if Yelan scaled with EM instead of with HP. Right, you build her with an EM Sands and instead of an HP Sands, you could use an EM weapon on her. That would allow you to double dip. You double dip with damage and with bloom damage. Right now, there's no Hydro characters that allow you to double dip with them. Kokomi to some extent, because she can be both a healer and do a lot of damage with her EM when you build Kokomi on EM and proccing the hyper blooms, but it's not quite what we're looking for. So I think that could be a huge improvement to Nilou teams if we ever get that in the future, but I think she's totally great now as well. For overworld and aesthetics, I already talked about overworld performance. Her aesthetic is one of my favorite in the game. She is the first actual red-headed female character. Of course, we had Diluc before her. Yanfei is more of a pink hair, if you're asking me. Aloy, okay, technically a redhead, but not red hair. So anyways, I was really happy to see that kind of Ariel vibes from Little Mermaid. And her aesthetic is just fantastic. I really love her aesthetic. I really love her voice acting. And like most Genshin characters, she's got a beautiful, beautiful design. I really like it. She's got lots of nice aesthetic weapons that work with her. This one looks great. The iron sting looks really good. Sometimes I'm trolling and I put something like this on her just because it matches and looks cool, and the weapon really doesn't matter very much. She is not a must-have character. She's not one of my top must-have characters. There is a must-have character coming out. Must-have. You don't have to pull any character in Genshin. It's a PvE game. But she is, although she's an S tier character, she is not a must-pull character, but she is absolutely worth it if you like her. If you like her, you should get her. Go get her right now. If you want to see what I think of Nilou compared to every character in the game, check out my tier list video down there. And if you want to see me rant and rave about the new Abyss, check out that video over there. Take care.